All right, UFC 271 is in the books, and right now I have Kelly Murphy of SiriusXM Fight Nation on the show to help us break it all down. Kelly, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm so excited. Fights were great. I'm happy to be here talking about it.
Yes, and very happy that you are on the show. Before we dive into the fights, I do want you to talk a little bit about yourself for people that might not know who you are, but I listen to you a lot. I'm on the road a lot for work. You obviously are on SiriusXM Fight Nation, throwing down with Misha and Renee and Jimmy Smith, unlocking the cage. So tell me a little bit about your backstory, how you got into, what you're doing now and what your goals are covering combat sports.
So I graduated from the Newhouse School of Public Communications at Syracuse University. And the summer going into my senior year, so the summer of 2018, I was lucky enough to get an internship with SiriusXM Fight Nation. At the time, I knew absolutely nothing about combat sports. So I was just trying to dive headfirst, learn as much as I could. I was working with the great Luke Thomas. So he kind of got me into shape. I never wanted to sound silly talking about fights with him. So I really leaned into it. And then January of my senior year, Marissa Rivas, my boss, called me and she was like, I have an opening. It'll line up nicely with graduation, if you interview and all goes well. And it did. So I've been working with Fight Nation since 2019 now, and I am obsessed with combat sports. It's become like a big part of my personality.
Yeah, I mean, you see the sport is continuing to evolve, and a lot of females you're seeing having roles covering the sport. So when you look at what would be the perfect job for you down the line, are you happy with where you're at right now? Is there something else where you see maybe like someone like a Laura Sanko that's cage side doing reporting? Like what stands out to you as like the perfect role in combat sports?
So, I mean, as of right now, I absolutely love what I'm doing. I always love doing things behind the scenes because if something goes wrong, I'm the last person to see it. So I like to make sure that everything goes right. I'm very much a perfectionist, and it's a really nice blend of being able to, do what I do behind the scenes on top of being able to talk on air with my host, because I'm fortunate enough to get the opportunity every day to really talk on air about the fights, which is a lot of fun. Obviously, like you said, you see the Laura Sankos, the Megan O'Leary's, Karen Bryant's, like unbelievable. And if I could do something like that one day, that would be absolutely phenomenal. But I'm still so new in the sport. So I'm just trying to learn as much as I can, learn as much as I can behind the scenes, and then, maybe move on to something else, but much later. So if my boss sees this, I'm happy, I'm staying.
Good answer. What is it like to work with Jimmy Smith? I mean, obviously he seems like a great guy outside of being a Pittsburgh Steelers fan.
Yeah. Okay. He's a Pittsburgh Steelers fan on a good day. And then, when the Rams win the Super Bowl, he's a big Rams fan all of a sudden. But he is phenomenal. I learned so much from him. He's obviously done it all. He's worked with Bellator, UFC. He's now with WWE. He knows everything. So, I get a lot of my knowledge from him, and we talk every fight night. We're always texting and I'm asking him questions, and he's just such a good person to learn from. And really all of the hosts on my channel, I've worked with Anthony Smith, Angela Hill now more recently. Just being able to learn from all of them and being surrounded by these great fight minds has been so beneficial to me.
Yeah, well, you're doing a great job on there, so keep it up. I appreciate you diving into a little bit about that before we start talking about UFC 271. And wow, what a card it really was. Obviously, the middleweight championship was the main event. Israel Adesanya defends against Robert Whitaker. A lot of people felt like the Reaper did enough to get the victory. He had those takedowns, although he didn't really have a whole lot of control time on the ground. I think it was like 3 minutes and 40 seconds total, and a lot of that was in the fifth round. So did you think the scoring was right? Do you think Bobby Knuckles did enough to win, or do you feel like Adesanya should have retained?
So I think the right guy won. I want to start there. I think Israel Adesanya is the rightful man to win that fight, but I don't think it's crazy to make a case for 48-47 Whitaker. I saw the media scorecards all over the place. Everybody on Twitter, I saw 48-47s both ways. I saw 49-46s, whatever it was. I think if you were going to make the case for a 48-47 Whitaker, it would have been rounds 2, 4, and 5. But I left that fight only being certain, Izzy won round 1 and Rob won round 5 to me. And I was like 2, 3, and 4. I don't want to be sitting at the judges' score table by any means. So I think the right guy won. But like I said, I wouldn't have called the robbery had Robert Whitaker walked away with that title again.
I've interviewed so many fighters in the past, Kelly, where they're on the wrong end of a split decision or a decision, and there's a lot of controversy surrounding it. What needs to be done to fix this moving forward? So many fighters talk about adding more judges, so there's more scorecards to go on. Something clearly has to be done. And what do you think it is?
I actually work with the queen of the wrong side of split decisions, Angela Hill. And we've talked about this at length pretty much every weekend where we see a bad split. We're like, what can we do here? I really think it comes down to at least surface level adding more judges, because the fact that there's only 3 and then, 2 of them get it wrong and you lose your fight, you lose half your purse, you're on a losing streak at that point. It's ridiculous. So I think the, easiest fix would be adding another couple of judges in there. Obviously not one, because you never want to get a 2-2, but like adding a couple judges in there, I think would be the way to fix it. But, you really never know. That's what's like so great and so annoying about MMA. Like you can go in there completely expecting one thing to happen and then something else happens.
Yeah, well, clearly something has to be done. I'm sure the UFC, Dana White, Bellator, all the promotions out there will make some sort of educated decision on what to do to fix this issue moving forward, because it just seems to be growing more and more momentum. We'll talk about what's next for Izzy here in a second, but first I wanted to get your take on what's next for Robert Whitaker. Obviously the former champion, now he's lost twice to Israel Adesanya. Granted, the second time it was very, very close. Do you think he can get another title shot? What does he need to do, and who makes sense for him next?
This division, it reminds me a lot of what we have going on at featherweight with Max and Volkanovski, and what we have going on at 170 with Kamaru and Colby, where you very much have a 1A and a 1B. So it's frustrating because I feel for Rob, and I was, not that no one said it or anything, I was like, I wonder if, he's going to call it. He had the burnout a few years ago. He has his family, obviously. And if you go in there and you lose twice to your champion, who's a dominant champion, who knows how long Izzy will reign, it's got to be discouraging in some way, shape, or form. But I liked what I saw from him in the post-fight presser, where he was like, you know what? A third fight between us is inevitable because I'm going to stomp everybody that comes in front of me again, which I love to hear that. But it gets frustrating because it's like, I don't know who could be next for him, because he's beaten a lot of these top guys except for Israel Adesanya. You know what I mean? Seems like Izzy has his next opponent pretty much mapped out, with Jared Cannonier making a statement on Saturday night as well. So I don't know what's next for Rob, because it's not like he's fallen way down in the rankings by any means. He's still going to be right there, and he's always right there. So I just don't know. He can continue to beat all of these guys, but then you don't know what's going to happen when he faces Israel Adesanya.
Yeah, I definitely feel like if you're in Robert Whitaker's camp and you saw that performance, it clearly is significantly leaps and bounds better than the first go around. I mean, that's just no brainer to say, but he's still a young guy. He's only like 30 years old. I think he still has plenty of his prime years in front of him. So maybe Adesanya is going to move to 205 if he beats Cannonier, because I mean, really, what else is there for him at 185? And I know he's talked about that in the past, going up to light heavyweight. So we'll see, if that happens, maybe Rob can, reclaim the belt. But for me, for my money, I feel like Vettori or Costa would make the most sense for Whitaker next. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, I like that a lot, because like we said, it looks like Cannonier is going to be next for Izzy. And then should Izzy get through Cannonier, I would imagine Sean Strickland's going to be right in that equation some way, shape, or form. So I like those two options for Rob. I mean, like you said, he has very much a lot of his prime ahead of him. He's so talented. And this performance against Israel Adesanya, has to make him feel good. I know he lost, so it sounds silly, but it was so much closer and so much more competitive. Like we said, people even had scorecards for Whitaker, compared to the first time around. So he has to feel at least good and a little bit more motivated after this one.
Yeah, for sure. Very well said. So it's clear Jared Cannonier is next for Israel Adesanya. Obviously hasn't been announced. That'll probably be booked at some point, maybe in the summer or early fall. Does Cannonier have a chance against Izzy? I mean, what did you see from his performance against Blonde Brunson that thinks, he's going to go in there and dethrone the champ?
I don't think he does. I think if anyone's going to beat Israel Adesanya at 185, it's Robert Whitaker on his best, most perfect day. Otherwise, I don't see it happening. I mean, Cannonier looked great against Brunson. He made a statement. Obviously, he's very talented. And I hate MMA math. So obviously, Cannonier and Rob fought, and Rob won that, pretty decisively. So I hate going by that, because obviously Rob and Izzy are two completely different fighters. But I just see Cannonier as the aggressor, where Izzy's such a great counter striker. He's looking for you to do that so he could capitalize on it. You know what I mean? So I think it's a great matchup for Adesanya. I think it's going to be exciting, because I don't think Cannonier is going to sit back, relax, and, let Izzy come to him, because then it'll be a snoozer. I think he's going to be aggressive and it's going to be exciting, but I still see it being a good night for Israel Adesanya when it gets booked.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I feel like Adesanya too just has the perfect recipe to be a huge star in this sport. He's got everything. He checks all of the boxes and he's so good on the mic. Like I loved what he did right before the fight started, where he did like rock, paper, scissors there to start it off. I mean, it was hysterical. And the thing that I'm worried about for Whitaker is that he's not going to get that third crack at
Right.
Adesanya. I truly believe that if he goes in there, he starts his cannoneer, which I expect him to, and I don't know who else is there for him next. I feel like he could go up to 205. Do you feel like that could be in the future for him, or do you think he's just going to stay at 185 and just continue to rule the division?
I definitely see him going back to 205. He has that aspiration to be a champion in two weight classes. And like you said, there's something I was trying to explain it last week, actually, going into the fight. There's just something about Israel Adesanya that makes me want to watch him. And like you said, he's so great on the mic, and he's not even necessarily trash talking. It's just who he is. And he's got this wit about him, and he has this just great personality that I want to hear him talk. And ultimately he backs it up, because you have a lot of these guys that are, talking, and then they get in the octagon and don't really back it up. Israel Adesanya does both, which is why I absolutely adore him and love watching him. I do think he'll go back to 205 at some point. I don't know if I see it happening this year. I see him taking on Jared Cannonier and winning, and then potentially Sean Strickland maybe later in the year, because I think he wants to get a few more defenses in at 85 before he goes back up to 205.
Yeah. And not to trash on Sean Strickland. I wouldn't dream of ever doing that in my life, because I'd be terrified of what he would
That's
do
smart.
to me. But I don't know that I was terribly impressed with his performance against Hermanson. I mean, Hermanson's a stud, but for me, he's one of those gatekeepers. Like, I don't think he's ever going to win the belt, but I think he's right there where, he's going to beat everyone else other than like the top dogs in the division. And I wasn't thoroughly impressed by him. I felt like, if he's going to be climbing towards a title shot, dominant wins and maybe finishes would be what you're looking for. Do you feel like Strickland has the recipe to give Izzy trouble if he is in line for a title shot?
I don't, because like I said, I really think it's Robert Whitaker on his best day ever is the only one that's going to give Izzy a problem in this weight class right now. But Sean Strickland, again, is a talker, and for better or for worse, people like to hear him. You know what I mean? He's making headlines. He's making news. I wasn't extremely impressed with his win over Hermanson either. Regardless, he did win. You go against Hermanson, who's not a talker. He's not the biggest name. And then you don't dazzle. Like, it's good. You won. And Hermanson's good, and he's a good fighter. But like you said, you have Jared Cannonier come out a week later and, do that against Derrick Brunson, who was on the win streak going into 271. That's your statement made. I would imagine Strickland's got to get another one in there before he takes on Izzy.
All right. And this leads to the bigger question for Israel Adesanya. Everyone's talking about GOATs nowadays. You see, I got the GOAT above my shoulder over here, Tom Brady. Yep. That's the GOAT of football. They talk about Michael Jordan being the GOAT of basketball. Well, Anderson Silva right now is the GOAT of 185 pounds in MMA. I mean, I'm not sure how many more title defenses he has than Adesanya, but I know Adesanya is starting to get closer. What do you think he needs to do if he's going to catch Silva?
I think he just needs to continue doing what he's doing. He needs to rack up the title defenses. If, he did it by not going to decision, doing it a little bit more flashy, I think that would be great. But at the end of the day, he's just got to keep racking up the title defenses. And, he's very much well on his way. We were talking about this on Jimmy's show yesterday, and some people were saying, it's not fair to compare Israel Adesanya to Anderson Silva. And it's not fair to compare Kamaru Usman to GSP and whatever. It's like, oh, yes, it is. We were saying these guys want to be the greatest of all time in their divisions. So they have to be compared to those people. You know what I mean? It's only fair. So I think if he just keeps doing what he's doing, which I really don't see any roadblocks for him, at least in the near future, I think he can very much catch Anderson Silva.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he does. The guy clearly, like I said earlier, he's got everything to be an absolute superstar in this sport. All right, let's move on to the co-main event. Tai Tuvasa finishes Derrick Lewis. And I remember, I saw on Twitter that you called it. You thought that was going to happen. I was on the complete other spectrum. I didn't think he was going to win. I thought the Black Beast was going to go in there and actually finish Tai Tuvasa. So tip of the cap to you for getting that right. What did you see in their skill sets that led you to believe that this was going to be the outcome?
You know what I mean? It was more than skill set, because they're very similar. They both want to go in there and take your head off. You know what I mean? They're not, crazy elusive on the feet. They don't have this incredible head work. They're both power punchers, and they're looking to, knock your head off. They both said it leading into the fight. For me, it was last time Derrick Lewis fought in Houston, he didn't look good against Cyril Gane, obviously. And that's really what I took going into this one. I was like, he kind of cracked under the pressure last time. Tai Tuivasa is going in here with absolutely nothing to lose. He was ranked number 11 going into it. Derrick Lewis ranked number 3. Tuivasa obviously looking to skyrocket the rankings, which he did. You know, we're sitting here talking today, and Tai Tuivasa is number 3 in the heavyweight division. And he had everything to gain. He gained the ranking. And if he lost, so be it. You know what I mean? You lost to the number 3 guy. So he was going in there, nothing to lose. Whereas Derrick Lewis, I think, was feeling a ton of pressure, having lost last time he fought in Houston too. But I was a bit nervous in the beginning because Derrick Lewis had Tai Tuivasa in a lot of trouble. So I was like, you know, maybe I didn't call it.
So do you think maybe fighting his hometown of Houston, Texas, that just puts a little too much pressure on Lewis?
I think it could go one of 2 ways, where it's too much pressure and, you know, you succumb to it, or it's a huge motivator for you. And thus far, you know, he's 0-2 at home in really big moments. So, well, I mean, with the evidence that's out there, you kind of have to think that that's what's going on. Or maybe he just had bad nights. But you know what? I said this on Jimmy's show yesterday. He kind of finds himself, and it's going to sound silly again, but where he wanted to be. He didn't want to be in 5-round fights. He was actually upset that he was in the co-main. He wanted to fight earlier in the night. So, you know, after this fight, that's kind of what's going to happen to him. He's going to fight in 3-rounders. He'll be a little bit earlier on the card. He's no less exciting than he was. Everyone still loves Derrick Lewis, loves to hear him talk, loves to watch him fight. So I don't think he's in a bad spot based on what he said that he wants.
Okay, fair enough. Now, before we move on to other fights here, I did want to give you a suggestion, something that I was thinking about might be good for on air, whether it's unlocking the cage or throwing down, and tell me what you think. I think your listeners and the people that are tuned into you day to day, they like to see you guys or listen to you guys while you do a shoey. Has that ever been a discussion? Are you guys going to do a shoey on air and see who finishes first?
Oh my gosh. You know what? So on Unlocking the Cage, Jimmy Smith doesn't drink, but he said he's done a shoey with like water or Coke before. And I'm like, Jimmy, that's so not exciting. Like, you're really taking away from the whole effect of the shoey. You know what I mean? I think it would be a lot of fun to do it on Throwing Down, because Renee and Misha can get down with the best of them. And so can myself and my co-producer, Mike. So that would be a lot of fun. Jimmy, he's a work in progress, that one.
Okay, so Throwing Down with Misha and Renee, you guys need to do a shoey, and I think I got my money on you getting the W there. What do you think?
I appreciate that, honestly. Like, as long as it's, you know, my shoe, it's fairly not worn, because I'm a bit of a germaphobe. Like, I have faith in my drinking ability as well, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, you just rock a new shoe. You just make sure you're wearing something new and clean that day, so it'll be easy.
Exactly. This way I don't really have to think about it, and then hopefully it's over before I even know that it started. That'll be fun.
I love it. Now, as far as the other fights on that card, was there anything else that stood out to you? Obviously, you know, that Cannonier-Brunson matchup was highly anticipated. What other fights really popped off to you that you thought were, you know, maybe some statements made by fighters?
You know what? I think Casey O'Neill did exactly what she wanted to do going in there. And obviously tip of the cap to Roxanne Modafferi. I'm glad that, you know, she really showed her warrior spirit and went to decision on that one, though I didn't think it was a split decision. I don't think anybody did. But I'm really proud of her. But, you know, Casey went in there and put on a clinic, and I'm really excited to see what she continues to do in the future. I think she's so cool, and I really like her a lot. In addition to that, the 2 other fights on the main card, Bobby Green and Hinata Moycano, looked really good. A lot of people are talking about them potentially getting after it in the future. It was just great, top to bottom, genuinely. Like, I sat there from the early prelims on and just enjoyed my night. I was like, I got my money's worth here.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, I try my best to be as unbiased and objective as possible. But you know, sometimes when you're interviewing a lot of these fighters, you can't help it. You like certain people more than others. And I've always been a huge fan of Jared Vanderaa. So seeing him in there with the former champion, Andrei Arlovski, I was really pulling for him. I was hoping he was going to get the win. What do you feel like looking at, you know, his ability in the heavyweight division? Obviously, he's a mountain of a man. Do you feel like he's someone that maybe with a couple of tweaks could make a push and maybe get into the top 15?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't think anybody with a loss to Andrei Arlovski can feel bad about it, because this man continues to get it done. I actually picked Arlovski going into the weekend just because his last few fights I've picked against him, and it never works for me, for no other reason than I'm just like, you know, I think now might be the time that the
Right.
man doesn't get it done, and he just continues to do so, which is really the only reason I picked him. I think Jared Vanderaa is a hell of a talent. And like you said, with a few tweaks, I can see him doing really good things in the division. And, you know, a loss to Arlovsky, even at Arlovsky's age, is not anything to be ashamed of by any means.
Yeah, totally agree there. Now, looking forward, there are some great fights around the corner. For my money, the Colby Covington Jorge Masvidal fight might be my favorite fight of the year. And I don't think that it's going to be necessarily as competitive as some people believe it will be. I think Colby Covington is a bad dude. Like, that guy is scary, and his skill set with when he either wants to strike or wrestle, I think he can do it all. So I'm expecting him to look rather dominant in this fight against Masvidal. I just want to get your take on that fight in particular. How do you believe that's going to shake out?
I couldn't agree with you more. I just think Colby Covington is a notch above Jorge Masvidal, but like you said, it's so highly anticipated, and I'm looking forward to it so much because of the backstory between these two.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there is genuine hatred between the two of them, and a lot of times you see, people play up some beef that they have, or they kind of make it up fight week to get themselves motivated. These two guys do not like each other, and I'm so excited to see it. Not necessarily for the competitiveness, but to kind of like see that build up and how that plays out in the cage. Because like you said, I think Colby Covington's just more well-rounded, and I think he's just better. Like I said earlier, on a good day, Colby beats Kamaru. You know what I mean? He's very much the 1B in that division. So I see Colby being able to do what he wants in there. There's that slight bit of intrigue because it's Jorge Masvidal, and you never know with that guy. Like, there's something about him, but I agree with you. I do see it being one-sided towards Colby.
Yeah, the embeddeds in the countdown show are going to be just like complete fire. I cannot
Must see TV.
Yeah, must see TV. I will not be missing that one. The co-main for that is actually RDA and Rafael Fiziev. That was just announced. How do you see that shaking out? Do you feel like the younger upstart Fiziev was going to get the win, or the former champion RDA is going to maybe continue his ascent to another title shot down the line?
I love that fight, and I think that's a massive upgrade for this 272 card. Before I even get into it, it was looking a little dim, other than the fact that the main event's amazing. Obviously no title on the line, but this is a huge upgrade. I'm so looking forward to this fight. I think Rafael Fiziev has so much potential, and we don't even know where this guy's ceiling is yet. And I love this fight against RDA because I think it's going to answer a lot of questions. RDA is no easy out. So I don't think anyone's looking at it like that either. You know what I mean? That RDA is the older guy, and he hasn't fought at this point since, I think, 2020. They were trying to get the Islam Makhachev fight set up. It didn't work out. I think this is going to answer a lot of questions about both guys. More importantly, right now, I think Fiziev, because we really don't know his ceiling at all. So for him to get this bit of a step up in opponent in RDA, who is just a killer, and like I said, no easy out, I think we're going to learn a lot, and I'm so looking forward to it. I was bummed when I heard it was getting pushed, and then I was like, okay, you know what? Makes 272 a goodie.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. You definitely know your stuff, Kelly. One other thing I want to get your take on is Kevin Holland down to 170. Do you feel like this is a good move for him? Because he's on that card now facing Alex Oliveira. And, I don't, my only concern with him there is, I've interviewed him before, and he said that making 170 would be no problem. But yeah, I'm not so certain about that. Like, he's a big guy. I can't imagine it's going to be, easy for him to cut down to 170. Do you think it will be easy for him? And like, where do you see him at welterweight in the future? Do you feel like that's his future, or he's going to be back at 185?
Yeah, I think a lot of people thought that sky was the limit for Kevin Holland. And I don't think that that's not true right now. But obviously he was having trouble on the ground. And then you drop to 170 with some of the best wrestlers in all of MMA. You know what I mean? And like you said, even if it's a tough weight cut, or even if it isn't the toughest weight cut, he's still going to be depleted in some way, shape, or form. So going into that with wrestlers who are incredible, I don't necessarily think that that was the fix for him, if that makes any sense. I think it may only get tougher.
Yeah, I mean, 170 and 155 for my money are the deepest weight classes in the sport, just because that's kind of like the average weight range of the normal male. There's just so many great athletes and phenomenal fighters that are there. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there with Kevin Holland moving forward. Before I do let you go, I want to get your take on the Super Bowl. Rams 23, Bengals 20. I lost quite a bit of money on it because the 4.5 spread. I thought the Rams were going to cover that, and they didn't. But what was your overall takeaway from that one? And who's your way too early Super Bowl pick for next year?
So I'm right there with you if it makes you feel better. I lost a lot of money as well. I made a bunch of parlays that I thought were really good, all of which included a Jamar Chase touchdown, which I thought was a lock, and clearly it wasn't. So those all went down the drain. I mean, otherwise, it was a good game. The only thing that was a little bit disappointing was that it was relatively flag free until the last 2 minutes or so. And then it was flag after flag after flag. There was a ticky-tack holding call on Cooper Kupp, I believe it was. I think that was really for the missed face mask earlier in the game, which is kind of a shame. But otherwise, it was competitive. I love watching Joe Burrow. I really do. I think that team has a really high ceiling because they're all so young. I don't think we see the Rams back there by any means. I think that's a one and done type of deal. Oh, that's a good question, because obviously we have Tom Brady retiring, so that would take the Buccaneers out of the situation. Aaron Rodgers is in question, but I always like the Packers if Aaron Rodgers is there. You know what? I'm going to go with the Bills, and it hurts me to say, but I'm going to go with the Bills. I loved what I saw from them this whole year. Obviously, I think we saw the Super Bowl when we watched the Bills and the Chiefs play. So I think they're going to be super motivated. I'm going to go with the Bills. Who are you going to go with?
Well,
on the record.
So I guess it depends on if my guy Brady is going to come out of retirement and where he goes. I feel like it's a good possibility if he does come back, but that's still in the air. So like I can't say that, oh, he's going to go back to Tampa and I'm going to pick them, or he's going to go to San Francisco.
Right.
That's a ready-made team if he were to go to his hometown and play for the Niners. Yeah. But I actually agree with you. I think that the Bills and the Chiefs would be the two that stand out to me, because let's be real too. I mean, how many more years is Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill going to be like the top tight end and wide receiver combo in football? And so there's a small window right now for the Chiefs to capitalize on. And if they don't win another ring before it's over, there's going to be a lot of questions about how great, Mahomes really is. So that's intriguing. But those would be the two teams that stand out to me.
No, absolutely. And, I'm not ready to answer those questions about Patrick Mahomes. I think he is an absolute stud of a player. So I'm hoping that, they can get back to the Super Bowl and win it at some point. But I like the Bills next year because of their losses. Like, I feel like that's just going to motivate them even more. I mean, I also said the same thing this year and it didn't happen, but, maybe 2 times and it happened. 3rd time's the charm. So we'll see. I hope not, though. I'm a Jets fan. So seeing any other New York team do better than the Jets, which is, every year. Hurts.
And I'm a Pats fan. So yeah, it would be difficult to see another AFC East team in the Super Bowl, but I'm sure you could care less about us Patriots fans. We've had way too many years of success.
Yeah. So. Guys, you deserve some rest. I do love Mac Jones though. I think he's a stud. I want to see how he evolves for sure.
You and me both. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate it. Before I do let you go, I want to give you the floor. Tell people where to follow you on social media. And if you have anything to plug, anyone to thank, the floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you for having me. First of all, this was a lot of fun. On Twitter, I am KMurphy25. On Instagram, I'm Kelly_Murphy. It's also linked in my Twitter. I try to make it easier for people. Like you said, you can find me on SiriusXM Fight Nation, channel 156, Monday to Friday, 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern, either with Throwing Down with Renee Paquette and Misha Tate, or Unlocking the Cage with Jimmy Smith. And, that's really it.